If someone came in your office and they were kind of red and sweating and they told you, they have a dry tongue and they tell you they've been working out in the hot sun for like the last, 2 days, obviously they're dehydrated. And if you take that with someone that comes in with pain as an analogy, in the pain world, we tell them all the things that are wrong with them. In my dehydration analysis, it would be like telling someone like, just so you need H2O, and H2O is 2 atoms of hydrogen and an atom of oxygen. And when you put those together, that forms water, and water is what every cell in the body needs. And we're made up of 70% water. And that you need to drink 8 glasses of this water a day so that you can survive. Or you just give them a fucking glass of water, and they actually feel better.
I'm Garrett Salpeter, and I believe that the most powerful and transformative way to help people recover from pain and injury, heal from trauma, and reach their highest levels of fitness and performance is to focus on the nervous system. In this podcast, we'll share knowledge from the frontiers of neuroscience and inspirational stories of how applying that knowledge has empowered people from all walks of life to heal, adapt, and grow. We have a special guest for this episode of the Undercurrent podcast. I am super excited to introduce Andrew Block. And Andrew has a background as a physical therapist, athletic trainer, and an acupuncturist. So you can probably tell from that we're going to get an interesting perspective today. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's awesome. I appreciate it, Garrett. It's always great to be with you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dive into this. Before we get into some of your background and different things, can you share, please, with everyone who's listening, can you share your perspective on pain and treating pain?
Well, like you said, I started out in the field of physical medicine, I think like a lot of traditional people. And I was always on a quest for pain, like always was my greatest interest. I wrestled in high school and college. I always had my aches and pains. And I just was always fascinated with the body and how the body works. And, from the first part, I was like studying like Joe Weider and going back to, 30 years ago of lifting weights and all that aspect. So my first aspect of knowledge was to learn as an athletic trainer, working with athletes. And that kind of put me on this journey of knowledge of learning a lot about structure. And when I came out as an athletic trainer and I finished that schooling, I was quite knowledgeable about the body, but I really still didn't feel like I had the ability to treat pain. It kind of took a little bit longer. I was explaining a lot about exercise, so I felt like I just needed more. So I went to physical therapy school almost as soon as I was done with athletic training as a further quest of knowledge about the body, because I wanted to continue this journey. And at the end of PT school, I definitely had a much greater understanding of the body. I could treat spines. I could treat really anything. And I knew everything about the body, but I really still didn't feel like it answered my quest of, how do you solve this issue of pain? And how do we do it quickly without like bombarding a patient with education and trying to explain, what's wrong with them? And so I graduated in 94 in December. In 1995, I went to acupuncture school because I figured, the Western perspective was really great, but I wanted to understand this kind of unseen world about energy and how the energy in the body works. It's funny is that even when I was in PT school, I went and got board certified in hypnotherapy because I believe that the mind also, played a role in it. What I really come to find out, even after graduating there at night and studying, is I actually had more knowledge, and I found the Chinese were very similar to the Western approach, where, we had to figure out the whys of why someone is broken so then we can fix them. And their whys are different than my whys that I learned in PT school, which was like muscles or ligaments or tendons or bones. In acupuncture schools, wind or blood or chi. So the whys were like an unseen or unknown whys. but I really came to find out the paradigm was really the same, which is where we teach someone or tell someone why they're broken, and so that we can try and fix them over a period of time. And at the end, they hope they feel better. And so it's been like this really big journey of interconnecting this acupuncture Eastern philosophy with this Western philosophy. And it's taken me a lot of years to come up with ways of solving pain where you get immediate results. And so I've kind of switched this paradigm around to what I call a feel better, get well paradigm. So a long answer to your question is it's really has been a quest of mine over the last, I'd say, 30 years. And thankfully so is over the last, I say, 10 years, I've created different systems that actually work to treat pain. And, and when I say treat pain, I mean to immediately get results. And
And
that's
so,
what the important aspect is.
and so when you say immediately get results, I hear this model. I want to ask you to elaborate on further about, you're saying that the traditional model is we need to figure out what's wrong and we need to get people well so that they feel better. And you're kind of flipping that on its head. You're saying you want to feel better first, right? Can you,
Yeah.
can you
And
dive into that a little more?
yeah, it's funny because obviously we've met and we've talked and so you get the idea. But I know people listening, this is a really, like, I have to really slow down because this is a big shift. And because we've all been taught this philosophy. I don't care if you're a strength coach, a PT, an ATC, a chiropractor, a doctor. We've all been taught this philosophy of what I call get well, feel better. And so when I say this, it still has a lot of value. I'm not saying anything that someone's doing is wrong. And I always slow down to say that because I know a lot of people come up with something new. It means you have to erase what you already know. And I just want to really be clear for people that it's not about that at all. It's actually about inviting everyone for this new paradigm, but you get to take all your old stuff with you. And so what I always say is, like, no matter where you are in your clinical profession, is take all those tools, whether you do manual therapy or exercise or balance training or some type of functional movement screening, just put them on the side, and then I'm going to give you a new belt, and then you can put all those tools back on. And the idea is that get well, feel better is a paradigm that we all currently utilize, is to figure out why someone is broken. And then once you figure out your whys, whatever that is utilize those with the person to eventually get them to feel better. So an example, if you're a strength coach or a PT, your whys are going to be weakness or tightness. So once you figure that out, you'll work on those things, strength and flexibility, for the next, say, 4 to 6 weeks. And then at the end, you want them to feel better. And so the shift is actually the opposite. I call it transformation, because time is really, really important. In the get well, feel better, it's change. People have to change. Like losing weight takes a lot of time. Building strength takes a lot of time. Transformation, immediate, is where someone feels better like that within seconds, minutes. It's almost like a little crazy, when people experience the work in how fast someone can get rid of their pain. But that doesn't mean that they're well. And that's where I really make clarity for people. That's where you can now put in back all your stuff of strength or flexibility or posture or whatever you do. So the thing I just want to really be clear for people, my systems are very inviting. I don't exclude anybody based off of your licensure, and I don't exclude anybody based off what you're already currently doing. You can bring all of that with you. So that's the part, it makes me feel good, because most systems or techniques actually exclude a lot of people. So feel better is all about transformational work of immediacy. You feel better. You're not so interested in the why someone is broken, so that you can actually get someone to feel better first, decrease their pain or stiffness, so that they actually can work on getting well.
I really like that perspective, and that's in line, for everyone who's listening who already is a NeuFit practitioner or people who are interested in our work. One of the reasons that this is often so beneficial is that people can see transformations in their first session. We'll have someone will come in, they can only lift their arm to about 15 degrees here, and then in one session they'll be able to get it up overhead because you're breaking through those same neurological, protective, compensatory, guarding patterns. And when you can help someone make a change, you know, you really you're giving them what they want, what they need, and you really have an opportunity to get that patient or that client to buy in and want to feel motivated to stay and work with you so that you can go through that process of getting well. But if you go through that process of, yeah, we're going to stretch these, strengthen those, and at 6 weeks we hope we feel better, it's no surprise that compliance is so low and that the rate of attrition, people dropping out of therapy, is very high because we're kind of not sure, like we're gonna try this, and there's this really long time horizon, and we hope we get better at the end, but we're not necessarily 100% confident that we will. So if you can show people those types of transformations early on, I think you definitely have their attention and they're motivated to want to continue with you. So I love that perspective. And can you talk more about how you in unseen science, in this realm that you're teaching, can you talk about specifically how you work with the nervous system and that element of the transformation and how you help people with pain?
Yeah, no, sure. But, if I could just before is kind of that's how, just to step back from what you were just saying and maybe give an example. And before that is like, I think that's why even from our first conversation, how we just like 3 years ago, we just kind of just locked in because we have a very, very similar philosophy, which I know is different. I know that you've had to work really, really hard to differentiate yourself from an electrical stim market to really a transformational piece of machinery. So like I love our journey together. And so I usually give an example for people. If someone came into your office, and I think it's kind of a little bit humorous, but I really do believe it hits home. If someone came in your office and they were kind of red and sweating, and they told you, they have a dry tongue, and they tell you they've been working out in the hot sun for like the last, 2 days, obviously they're dehydrated. Uh, and if you take that with someone that comes in with pain as an analogy, in the pain world, we tell them all the things that are wrong with them. In my dehydration analogy, it would be like telling someone like, just so you need H2O, and H2O is two atoms of hydrogen and an atom of oxygen. And when you put those together, that forms water. And water is what every cell in the body needs. And we're made up of 70% water. And that you need to drink 8 glasses of this water a day so that you can survive. Or you just give them a fucking glass of water, and they actually feel better. And I know it sounds so silly, and I really, I love it because it shows this is what, unfortunately, and I say this with a lot of compassion and empathy, um, we are forcing down bad news on patients every single day. Someone is coming in and suffering. They're in pain. They're telling you, I'm suffering. And all we do for the first usually session to maybe more is tell them all the things that are wrong with them. They're weak, they're tight, they're fat, they're old. It doesn't feel good. And so it's not that you're wrong. You're probably right. They probably are overweight, they are tight, they are weak, just like the person is dehydrated. But the transformation comes is when you give someone a glass of water, they're really, really thankful. And when they're really, really thankful and you gave them something that they really needed, they're very open to work on whatever you have to do moving forward. So in the physical medicine world, when you get someone to feel better right away, transformation, they're very open to doing the stretching stretching, the exercises, the postural work, all the things that are absolutely needed for them to get well. So I just want to give that example so you see that. But let's talk about what you just said about what makes it transformational work, like what makes it like something that of immediacy. And this is again where I think we really resonate is what I was taught in school is that I had to work on the somatic nervous system. What I really come to find out is the magic is in the autonomic nervous system. And it makes sense. That system is completely magical. It's fucking insane how all these organs work 24 hours a day, 365, just based off input that comes in. You know, it's cool that I can lift up something and use my muscles, but it's really magical. I call that the unseen world, you know, i.e. the unseen science, which is my brand, which you had mentioned, but not to get to that is looking at all the stuff that we don't see, which is in this autonomic nervous system, which is so important. So the the first part is defining pain. This is what differentiates the somatic work from, I say, the autonomic work. So I define pain as our body's way of expressing protection. So pain equals protection. Just like crying is our body's way of expressing sadness. To give clarity to the autonomic nervous system is when the autonomic nervous system responds, it always over responds. And the example I give patients and I give people, if you ate something bad, you don't get the exact amount of stomach acid, autonomic nervous system. You get flooded. And then your body either has to reabsorb what it produced or you get acid reflux, you get a problem. It's the same thing with pain. When you're in a state of protection, you're always, when someone is in pain, they are always in a state of overprotection. That's how the autonomic nervous system works. You have local injuries, somatic, but you always have an autonomic overprotection. And this is the area that's really, really missed in traditional medicine that you hit with direct current. That's why we're such a great match. Is we want to work on, my opinion, we want to work on the overprotection. So I have an example I give to patients. Everything I explain to practitioners, I want to be able to explain it to a patient because when they're suffering, it's got to be easy for them to understand. I say that mostly what I say to you, I say to a client coming in about the two different. Instead of saying autonomic nervous system, I call it automatic nervous system so they can understand the languaging. The automatic nervous system, when it reacts, it always overreacts, like we just said. So say you have pain or a problem, I call it like a fort. When we send soldiers out to protect, most of the time we only need one or two soldiers. But depending on your level of stress, you might get 5 soldiers, you might get 10 soldiers. And unfortunately, people are so stressed out, they get 100 soldiers for something that they don't need. And the negative in traditional somatic therapy is that we're treating the other 99 soldiers that don't need treatment. And this is what takes so long to get people to feel better. With transformational work, we're working on the system of the 1 soldier, the 2 soldiers, the 5 soldiers. I would call the real issue of what the problem is so that we can see immediate results.
If you're ready to supercharge your practice, listen to this. Garrett and Team NeuFit have just released a new online course entitled Introduction to the NeuFit Method. In this detailed 8-hour course, you'll gain mastery of the fundamental techniques in our practice, including muscle testing and activations, nerve glides, and joint articulations. You'll also get introduced to our patented direct current stimulation device, the Newbie, an incredible machine that's empowered professionals just like you to help their patients heal, adapt, and grow faster than they ever thought possible. To learn more, go to www.neu.fit/learn. And now back to the show.
I like that. I love the description of how pain, and that is absolutely in line with modern neuroscience, about how pain is a protection. It's an overprotection many times. so many people have pain that lingers even after the original injury is healed, or pain that comes back to a certain area of the body, even though there's no damage there, because it is an overreaction to stress that's not even physical, or it's, things that quote unquote should not even hurt. And so
Yeah.
to be able to have that global approach to calm the autonomic or the automatic nervous system, I think is hugely valuable. And people who are familiar with NeuFit will recognize a lot of overlap, a lot of parallel. So like you said, I think we both were immediately drawn to each other when we met. We actually met, just for context, we met through the University of Texas here in Austin through the sports medicine department, have some mutual colleagues there. And so, when I kind of saw it in that context, when you were here doing training with some of their staff members and different things, I was open to it, just because of who was doing it. And then when I got to really dive in, I was super interested. Can you talk to a little bit of these techniques? I think we're definitely on the same page about wanting to kind of quell or calm that overprotective overreaction response. With the newbie, we're scanning around, finding some of these more local places. It sounds like you're treating it a little more globally. Can you talk about some of the actual techniques that you use, so our listeners can get a sense of how you actually take those wonderful principles and apply them?
Yeah, it's funny. There's so many different languages they say. So I'll go on the last thing you say about techniques and systems. So, the hard part for a lot of people is it's what I do is not tech. It's not a technique. Technique is something you do based off of the system. And our system, like we say, is based off the whys, the current system. My system is not based off the why. And I try to the system is based off a new paradigm. So one thing is my, say, techniques are based off a new system. So I really try to work and for people to really understand this new system. And as part of it, there's a couple things you said. One is about like, how do we define pain? I think also how we define acute and chronic pain. Unfortunately, I define it differently. I don't say unfortunately, I just do. And we define chronic pain based off a time element. I do not. I define chronic pain based off objective findings. So if someone has pain in their ankle and everybody looks at that ankle and sees there's no redness, there's no swelling, there's no disformity, and they have pain, I call that chronic pain, because they have pain based off no objective findings. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but I say unfortunately because the patient really suffers from a lot of this stuff, of this kind of, I would say, this misleading information that makes us feel good as clinicians, really, really smart, but it doesn't necessarily value the patient. That's why I say unfortunately, is when we talk about pain like that, if I say to a patient, you have pain, but there's no objective findings, it's about stress. Again, it makes the patient feel like shit. Like, oh my God, I'm a mental case. And it's like, no, this way we're built. We're built to actually with this aspect. So it's not someone that's mentally wrong or they're overstressed. It's just life. Life is more stressful now, and that's why I have way more chronic pain than we ever have, or pain in general. So I never really talk with a patient about their functional stuff, about their stress. I want them to feel better right away. Then we can address, hey, are you really rich? Yeah, I really am. I'm going through a divorce. I'm changing a business, finance. Okay, what are some things we can put in place there to work on your stress, but not saying it the other way around. So we're resetting the nervous system. We're not making it, we're not doing anything of with overprotection, but besides creating a new paradigm for the actual client. So if they had 99 soldiers, now all of a sudden they have 5. Resetting it, just so we're clear. I want people to really get that, so that people don't start to think that we're doing something to the nervous system to work on like overcompensation, or there's something wrong. There's not anything wrong. Just on that aspect. Now you asking a question about the actual systems. So there's 3 systems that I've created. One is called reflexive pattern therapy, which kind of works on the global system of resetting the autonomic nervous system, which is where we identify reflexive areas, patterns that happen in the body, um, that we can immediately reset. But not only immediate reset, we can actually show the patient. And I did this on you, and I do this on a lot of people. And I always, it's a really wowing thing. It's very hard to explain. It's really incredible to experience. And from that, it enabled me, which is hard for people to even believe, but I was treating 60 to 80 patients a day, based off of RPT and the systems I create, because the results are so immediate. And it makes me feel good that I'm able to do it. I don't talk about it too much because I know most people will have a hard time even believing that a physical therapist can treat that volume of patients, but you can. And there's a big shift in your business model when you do. But the other systems I've created is what I call painless dry needling or color mapping. And this is a system that I think really resonates with hopefully the newbie and the NeuFit community, because it's a little more tangible. It's something that you can explain to the patient a little bit easier, and something that you can use chart wise to understand easier. RPT is a little bit more esoteric. So my goal is to work with the newbie and the NeuFit community is on your mapping program that enables us to utilize that program much more efficiently and effectively, so that you can get results. And it's based off the concept of what I call embryological or an embryological model. It's the work of one of my mentors, Dr. Richard Tan, who's just a brilliant acupuncturist and engineer. And what I did was I made my own interpretation of his balance method, and I call it color mapping. And the idea is that our body, when we're formed, a sperm and an egg come together to form one cell. Then we go through cell division, where one cell becomes two, becomes four, becomes eight, but they're all identical. Eventually, early on, we go through what's cell division. Our cells start to separate. We become who we are. And to make it very simplistic, our hands eventually separate from our feet. So they look very similar. Our wrists and ankles, elbows and knees, hips and shoulders. So hypothetically, if you had an elbow problem, we can then, I call that area the light bulb, the area where there's pain. We can find different switches in and around the knee that will get you immediate results. And what I've come to find out is we can use direct current and map people to get immediate results working non-locally. It's actually so cool because it's a really big wowing factor. I always say, it's cool to make a quarter disappear, which you can utilize with NeuFit. But when you can make a car disappear, it's like holy mackerel. So when you're working on a different area in the body, to make that pain disappear, it's really wowing. The example I give to clients is if you came in a room and a light bulb was off, it wasn't working. Would you play with the bulb or would you hit the switch? And of course, you'd hit the switch. In medicine, depending on what your profession is, we all work on the bulb. And then we try to develop techniques based off of the bulb, whether you're a PT, a chiro, a massage therapist, and even NeuFit, of working locally, of how do we work on that local area. And I just train people in a system that works on the switches. And that's why I think we have a lot of synergy. RPT is more of a global approach, which is a really wowing effect. It puts everything together on the autonomic nervous system, which is incredible. But I know that for most people, they're going to resonate a lot more if we just start with color mapping. It's a really easy way to learn. It's based off colors. It's easy to apply. And the best of all, you get a really big wow factor.
And so this is something that, within the NeuFit kind of hierarchy, or within our treatment, for example, this would be a place where just kind of for context, if I were working on a wrist injury, for example, this would open up new avenues to where I could use the newbie perhaps on the opposite ankle, or on a different limb, and that would create some of these changes. So it's cool, and like you said, I mean, it can be really mind blowing and really really profound and interesting for patients. So it's really cool. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned your clinic. So you've had for many years a clinic in the DC area in Maryland, and can you talk a little bit about how you've been treating people doing these techniques? And I know you have a couple team members using the newbie. Can you talk about how you've integrated the two, your unseen science with the newbie?
Sure. Well, before I tell you my successes, let me tell you my failures. So, I first started out, I always kind of had the entrepreneurial spirit. I was always a very hard worker. I had a really big quest for knowledge. Like I said, all the different schooling I would probably say more continuing education and then probably 10 people combined when I first came out. I was always searching. So I got certified in structural integration, which is a manual therapy, myofascial type system, based off Rolfing. I got certified in Pilates. I looked at gyrotonics. I had a whole clinic in Pilates and gyrotonics because I thought strengthening in Pilates and core stuff was really important. I looked into all the functional movement screenings. I was into a whole host of thermography, neurobiology, the neuropsychology aspect. I had, a whole host of equipment on side of that. And I had a lot of knowledge. And in 2008, I went bankrupt in a clinic in Miami Beach. And, really was a big eye-opening experience for me. What I really figured out is that knowledge is really not the key. It's helpful and important. But it's really wisdom that really was what I was in search of. And so it was a real slap in the face to close those doors, especially with all the knowledge I knew. So I was completely burnt out. I was treating one patient every 45 to 50 minutes because that's what I was told I needed to do. Patients want one-on-one care, time for money, develop a good service aspect, get more into cash, this whole thing. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but for me, I was fried. And, I was really, really tired. And what I came to learn out of this business is that it put me back in. The good thing is I'm really a persistent person. So I got back on the horse, and I'm going to figure out these other systems. And from there, once I figured out how I can treat 20, 30, 40, 50 patients in the day and give them what they're asking, their glass of water, give them what they're coming for, which is pain, feel better, get well, I was able to increase my volume considerably, where I was now, really, I was moving towards what I call money or cash for results, and more, in essence, having a model where I can command more pay based off of what I was doing for someone, giving them their solutions. So I do have a clinic in the DMV area that works on pain. And what I've come to see with the NeuFit is, it's really, it's an awesome piece of machinery. Like I always acknowledge you, and that, I'll do it on camera now. I'll have to do it for all your people, of how much respect I have for you, of, someone that's not necessarily a clinician, but has such respect for clinicians. And I think you're a really, really special person, because you're super, super smart and have to take down this ego, of knowing what you know, to start to interact with a lot of people that have a lot of big egos in medicine, to say, hey, I want to introduce this product, and I know that it works. And I've always, like, the first day I got the NeuFit, I just saw the amazing results. So I absolutely, have just fallen in love, not of you as a person and as a leader in this industry, for helping people and making a difference in people's lives, but also in what you produced.
I think that there's a really exciting opportunity. And just, to foreshadow, you and I are working together on a few different continuing education offerings. And so that's something that, is in the works. And so something that we'll be able to offer to NeuFit clinicians, at some point in the next several months. So I think I think there's a couple different applications. I mean, one is, you know, like you said, other ways to apply mapping, and then the other is using some of these more global techniques. Like we have something we call a master reset. RPT is an even faster way to create some of that global calming of getting those soldiers to come back into the castle, getting them off of high alert. So it's I think there's several different ways several different ways that the our certainly our shared philosophies can be applied, and how some of these techniques can fit in. And I'm excited to dive in and explore more of that. I can say that having had RPT done to me, it's cool how within a couple minutes of some of these different inputs throughout the body of some quick stretches and some slapping different pressure points and different things, about how, certain points that I had that were sensitive on me as part of my protective pattern, how that, they just in the span of a few minutes went away. And so, I can tell you from my own experience and from some of our mutual friends and colleagues, some of the outcomes they've gotten, that it definitely can add value. I'm excited to work more closely with you and put together some of these different continuing education modules for the NeuFit community. In the meantime, for people who are interested in learning more and possibly diving into some of your existing continuing education, how can people find you, Andrew, if they want to reach out to you and learn more about unseen science?
Well, the brand, the overall, like I'm really almost coming to you like really at the beginning of this aspect of working in the community of the unseen science and the autonomic nervous system. So I really love to for your community in like your whole tribe that you've created. I want to give you my personal email because I it's much easier for me to talk to people that are already working on the autonomic nervous system.
Mhm.
It's very difficult for me to get people that only are working on the somatic system to say, hey, let's transfer over and work on this system. That's what I've come to find. So my personal email is A as an apple, O as an Oscar, and then my last name Bloch, BLOCH at gmail.com. I also just give you my personal cell phone number, which is 305-788-7961. And I do that because you guys are like, this community is a really, I just love this community. I always have, because I do believe there's tremendous synergy. We have to, on the autonomic world, kind of stick together. It's going to take that to make this transformational change, because we have a lot of forces that hold on to somatic. Like I know why someone is broken, because a lot of ego in that. I totally get it. I was there. And I don't want to say that's a bad thing of knowing the why, but when we get focused on that, the patient doesn't really get the benefit. So anyone that's involved in NeuFit to me is like already gets like we need to do something different. And so I'm totally in the collaborative aspect. Some of the first stuff I'm doing is in color mapping and what I call painless dry needling. The reason I call it painless dry needling is dry needling is becoming so popular. So I want people to know you don't need to use needles. The color mapping and utilizing NeuFit, you can actually use electrical stim utilizing and call yourself a painless dry needler. So if that helps you to get more clients, because people are looking for dry needling, was my idea of giving you some initials that might hold some weight to bring in more clients for yourself, which is just so important, because I do believe in this resetting of the global. And I know I'm probably, because what I don't see sometimes is how difficult some things are, because I developed it. I'm sure if you have the same problem, it's kind of like people call you with an issue and it's like, oh, that's kind of simple. But reality, it's not really simple. Like a global resetting, it's simple to put it on, but explaining it to the patient, what happens when you don't get the results, it's kind of like it creates I believe it can create a lot of tension for clinicians more. And so time becomes really valuable. So I always value people's time. I always want to develop systems that decrease your time to get wow results. And so RPT, which takes literally, when you understand how to do it, definitely less than 5 minutes, and can get wow results, as opposed to putting stim units on all these different areas and then turning it up and waiting and see. It's just a different modality. Now, afterwards, what I do recommend is doing RPT and then doing the resetting, because now you've already created the wow. Absolutely, the direct current will help in resetting the body, just like you would do to strengthen the local area. So even if you're doing the global resetting, it's a great way still to integrate it. Don't think I'm saying don't do that, do this. No, we want to do these together.
Mhm.
And that's I hope that's clear for people, that it's really a collaboration as opposed to one thing or the other.
Absolutely. And the thing I like about this collaboration is that we're very consistent, and we have that same message of nervous system first, and particularly the importance of the autonomic nervous system, as you said. So I think that's fabulous. We covered a lot of ground today. I think that you'll certainly will have gotten some people in our community interested, and please do. That was gracious, very gracious of you to give out your email and phone number. So anyone who's listening to this, if you're interested in reaching out and talking to Andrew, please do. He's the real deal, and we'll be coming out with a lot more different opportunities. We're doing some R&D right now, research and development on different ways to apply the newbie in this color mapping framework, and with some of these different techniques. So there'll definitely be more to come here. And thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. I really appreciate your perspective, and I want to acknowledge the incredible work that you've done to put this together, the journey you've had, and now the thousands of people you've been able to help. And I'm excited to see this new continuing education platform that you're launching, and I think it's wonderful work. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing it.
This is my pleasure. Like, it's always, anytime we get together, I always learn something. I love the collaboration. It's really an honor to be able to walk this journey in this kind of autonomic world, because it's transformational work. I'm excited because I know all the people that have, newbies and are associated with NeuFit align with the same philosophy. And it's just exciting to collaborate with everyone and anyone that's involved in this work. So I'm just excited to talk with anybody, and I just appreciate and acknowledge everything you're doing, and I'm excited for the future.
Awesome. So are we. Thank you for joining us. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And this is the Undercurrent Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the Undercurrent Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date as we release future episodes.